Okay, welcome back from the break. Thank you again for coming. We'll start our third speaker today now. Our third speaker is Christine Tutssel. She's the co-founder of Axonify here in Waterloo and Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. Please welcome Christine.
Thanks. Thank you. So I'm Christine Tutssel, and I co-founded Axonify almost 10 years ago now with Carol Lehman. And so what I wanted to do today was talk to you a little bit about the journey we've been on in our organization and how we lead internally, and then talk a little bit about how we use data and our customers are using data to actually help them lead and manage their teams. So as I said, we started about 2011, and there was just 3 of us working in the hub downtown Kitchener. And we're now about 180 people, and we've grown to service customers around the globe in over 140 countries and 50 languages. So it's been quite a journey that we've been on. Now, both Carol and I had the unfortunate pleasure of serving leaders in our past who were very much command and control and very much doing things that we didn't really think were the right ways to develop people in terms of, really putting people against each other to see who would win and that type of thing. And we just didn't want any of that in our company. So being female-led, we really led with compassion and trying to really understand who our people are, what makes them tick, and how we can support them moving forward. So what we do, through the growth, it's been tough because, you start with a small little Axonifam that can sit around the dining room table for Christmas dinner to, 180 people. How do you keep your culture and how do you keep things going over that period of time? And so we've been very purposeful about how we've done that and really trying to make sure that we stay extremely transparent and open with all of our employees. So we have town hall meetings every 2 weeks. We have everyone together. We have lunch. We talk about what's going on in the business, what's working, what's not. People can recognize one another for achievements they've made or special things that they've done, and really keep that kind of collaborative atmosphere going. And that's really, that's been really essential for us to keep the Axonifam all working together and wanting to come to work every day. And so if you look at our reviews on Glassdoor or the awards we won for a great place to work, you can see that the employees really feel that the management cares about them and that we're all working together. And I think that's been an essential part of our success. And particularly when we look to our customers and how we work with them, I always say to our customers, our tech is one thing, our people are another, and you need a good partner to help you on your journey. And I think that we've done a great job of pulling the team together and really focusing on our customers, putting them first, and making sure we listen and we respond to them. So I feel really good about how the team works together, and I think that open transparency is super critical. And again, some of the other folks were talking about, knowing your people and making sure you can respond to them one person at a time. And we've had situations in the business where, I was telling Steve this earlier, we have a guy who works for us, he's a sales guy, and he reminded me, we were both down in Austin this week at an HR conference, and one of the HR leaders was presenting, and she was talking about what they do for their people and how they keep them as employees for a long period of time. And somebody asked, well, so what do you do? And Dave said to me after, he goes, Christine, do you remember what you did for me? And I went, no. And he said, do you remember when I came to you and I asked for a sabbatical? And I said, oh yeah, right. So this was years ago, he came to us and said, could I take a sabbatical for 6 months? I want to keep doing what I do, but I'm going to be on the road traveling with my girlfriend, and she's going to be doing these locums all over Asia. And we're thinking, we have never done that before. And so we talked it over, and there was kind of one school of thought that said, well, we can't do this, it'll set a precedent, everyone's going to be asking for this, like what if it doesn't work? And I just said, you know what? I think we got to let him do it. I mean, he's been a great performer, he's a good guy, he's got a thoughtful plan, and let's come up with a compensation approach for him that's going to work while he's on the road. So we did that, He traveled for 6 months, blew his quota out of the water, was the top performer for the year, came back, and has remained a top performer since. And he is committed to Axonify because we did that for him. And so it's doing those kinds of things to let people live their life and do the things they need to do so they can stay part of you that I think is really essential. So that's just a little bit about how we lead. Now, we are a learning company, so our mission is to really change the face of corporate learning as it is today out there in the industry. And so what I'd like to talk to you about, there we go, is just a little bit about big data. And I think everybody in this room is probably well familiar with the concept of big data. But I want to talk to you about how that applies to learning and how it can help you manage your people moving forward. And so if we can take big data and the analytics with that, we can really create a huge advantage for the business in terms of understanding our people. So the compassion and understanding piece is one component of it, but really understanding what they know and what they don't know and how they need to be coached and how we can lead them to success, I think is another component that's been missing in the industry. So if we think about big data and how it applies to different segments of the business. From a sales and marketing point of view, there's lots of different ways that we can apply big data, and we're just implementing this cool solution right now where it actually scrapes the web. And so if you're looking for a solution like Axonify, it surfaces to us that there's a number of people in your company out there on the web searching. So it kind of gives you visibility of what we call the dark funnel. So traditional marketing in a B2B world is you're trying to find customers going outbound and through digital, and this gives us intelligence as to that digital side. So that's an example in sales and marketing. I don't need to give this room an example of using big data in manufacturing or distribution because there's several out there, and I think we're all well aware of those. But in the HR space, it's interesting because there are technologies out there today that can use big data to help with applicant tracking and surfacing what's the right applicant for you to review and interview in the process. But when it comes to the people, really understanding what those people know, there's no way to do that with big data, or there hasn't been until very recently. So I was at a retail conference recently, and people are up there talking about, we know all about our inventory, we know all about our supply chain, we know what's going on in the stores, we've got all the data for what people buy online, what they buy in the store, what their cart looks like and everything, but we don't know anything about our people. We don't know what they don't know, where the exposures are, where the risks are for the business, how they need to be coached. And so that's the problem that we're trying to solve, is really how do we lift this employee knowledge and then their behavior, because knowledge translates into behavior if it's coupled with confidence. So that's what we're going to explore here in a minute. So why has this been a problem, and why can't we figure out what people know? It's because training has always been event-based. So it's like when we went to school. We sat in the classroom, we did e-learning, we did some applied things, but we just did it one and done. We took a test, checked the box, and it was all about completion-based learning. Completion-based learning doesn't tell you anything, because we all know that you're going to forget that within 30 days, and some of it when you walk out the door. So this one-and-done approach does not provide us with any kind of data. And so we've got to change that so that we have data that has the volume that we can use to apply machine learning and AI to. We have to have enough variety of that data, and we have to have the velocity of that data so that we're seeing it accumulate over time. So Gartner kind of focuses on the 3 V's, and then there's the value and veracity as a piece as well. So we can't produce this learning and insight through traditional methods, so how can we do it today with a different way? Well, there's a new approach out there, which is called microlearning. So there are a lot of companies that are now focused on providing their learning in what I'll call bite-sized chunks. Okay, so instead of taking a 30-minute session, you might take a 3-minute session. So how do you do that? Well, you do that by only giving them what they need to know and let them look up what they might need to have reference to. But we want to focus on really those critical things. So if we're thinking about safety as an application, we want to make sure that Am I like stepping too close to something here? We want to make sure that they know safety so cold that they are going to actually have it in their head every time they make that specific movement or they think about that specific thing, that is just second nature to them. And why is this whole thing about micro-learning now? Why can we do that, and why does it actually work? Well, because first thing is we know how the brain works now. There's tons of research out there. We know exactly how we retain information, and it's super important that we leverage what we know. Long-form learning is not the way to help your employees learn anything. So if we can give it to them in small chunks and also use this concept called spaced repetition, which means you have to repeat things over time and use questions to drive that retention. So if I say to you, what did you have for lunch last Thursday? You might not remember what you had, but if you think about where were you last Thursday, then you'll start to have some association, and then you might remember that you had a pizza for lunch. Just, let's pick a pizza. So then if I say to you 2 weeks from now, what did you have for lunch 2 weeks ago last Thursday, you will remember that you had a pizza. And then if I ask you again 3 months from now, you will remember. So that's it, spacing it out over time. So as we space things out over time and repeat them, this is kind of the foundational component of building this big data strategy. So the cognitive piece is critical. The tech piece is equally as critical. Everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket. Everybody wants to learn mobilely. When you're at home, if you don't know how to do something, what do? You Google it, and you look it up, and you fix the problem. That's how we do things. Why don't we do that at work? So we need to start doing what we do at home at work in just a more controlled environment. And then the expectations of the modern employee. We just did a survey with Ipsos Reid of modern frontline workers and asked them what they want. And 89% of those learners said, we want to learn in the flow of work every day to stay engaged, which was that's the overwhelming majority. So I thought that was pretty interesting because we talk about, earlier we were talking about people come to work, they want to do a good job. And so we need to provide them with the tools that they need in order to do a good job and to be motivated while they're doing it. So what we've done is built a platform that allows you to learn in the flow of work. And what we see is 83% of employees are engaging with learning 2 to 3 times a week. So that's incredible because most of the time they'll engage like once a month, once a quarter. It's compliance-based. So what we need to do is create a fun environment to drive this kind of connection to learning and want people to participate. And once they get in the habit, they tend to start doing it every day. So what does this do? It produces this big data. So now we're answering all these questions, we're consuming all these little micro videos, and so we know what the measurement looks like. And we see that we're getting all this data on what are you learning, how proficient are you, do you understand it, is your knowledge decaying, how many iterations of content have you seen, and on and on. So we can collect these data points, and now we know every time you answer a simple question, we're collecting 12 data points, and we even can track your behaviors as well. So you may want to view somebody doing something and understand their behavior. That actually contributes to their learning as well. So we get all of this big data, and then what we can do is take the big data and combine it with the business data. So for example, let's take a retail example, so same store sales. I might upload that. I might upload all of the big data I have from the learning that's associated with selling, and then I apply machine learning. And it looks for the patterns in the data, and it will actually be able to then create an attribution. So now we know I learned this, it drove this part of my business result. So that's super powerful to be able to understand that piece. So when we started out in this business, we built this adaptive learning model, and it was fairly rudimentary in its form back in 2011. And we continued down this journey, worked with Walmart actually on building out this behaviors capability where we started to view what people were doing and add that to the data model. And then moving forward to this attribution I was just talking about. So applying machine learning, uploading business results, comparing it to the big data, and knowing what's contributing. And then this exposes that attribution to the leader. So the leader can now look and go, here's my team. This is what they know. This is what they don't know. This is what the system is now recommending I do to help that individual be better at what their job is. So it will really understand that person at an individual level and provide leader with data that they can coach to. And that's something that we just don't have today in the old school learning environment. So the secret sauce is the predictive piece. So from a predictive standpoint, last year we launched this predictive capability. So now we can actually predict what's going to happen in the workplace based on the learning model. So we know that, is that?
Try this one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so what we know is that we can actually tell, I'll give a specific example. Let's say you're in a warehouse and you're doing safety training, or in a manufacturing facility, you're doing safety training. Taking this data, we can actually predict that we expect there to be an incident in this plant on this shift based on the data that we have. So what that allows the manager to do is now adapt and coach accordingly to ensure that we can preempt that situation before it occurs. Could be a sales situation where we're forecasting you're going to miss the target in the store. What do you need to do to adapt? And this is all based back to what your people know and what they don't know and how we put that together. So I bring that forward today because it's been a piece of the puzzle that's been missing. And as we look at leading people, knowing their history and who they are and what their personal things are is one thing. But the other thing is on a professional development level, being able to really help understand how do we lift each one of them up and make them a better person. So we did a study where we took data from just over 250,000 employees, and we looked at 18 million learning sessions, which creates hundreds of millions of data points. And we looked at how that data looked over a 12-month period. And then this is what we found. So the impact measurement, this is showing the attribution rate of learning to the business result. So you can see that from a productivity standpoint or from a sales or safety standpoint, there is a significant link between what you teach your folks on a regular basis and what impact it has on the business. So this can be hugely impactful for you running a business, but also from a people management point of view. So 29% on average, that's not too bad. Because to think about learning having that kind of impact on business, what's key here now is we can see what helps the business, but what doesn't help the business. So if it's not helping, get rid of it. If it is helping, double down. And I think that can really help drive things forward. So when it comes back to the people, then looking at how do we lead through data is a new method, I think, out there in the industry to help you figure out how to drive business metrics forward at the same time as also managing with that compassionate piece. And if you can pull the two things together, I think you really have a strong point to lead from. Okay, that was my...
Cable up for the question and answer.
Morning, everyone. Morning, Christine.
Morning.
Very nice to see you again.
Thanks, Matt.
So it was a fantastic story, I guess, of a startup that's really done very well, incredible growth, and very nice to see a Canadian example of that. So you've got kind of a unique situation where the previous two presenters did a very nice job on discussing kind of the pivot from traditional leadership to a more inclusive or localized leadership model. From the startup, being a co-founder, I'm imagining your leadership style had to be very adaptive from when there were 3 employees around a kitchen table to 180 employees. Can you speak a little bit about some of the strategies you would have used or some of the insight you may have gained seeing that level of growth so quickly?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think it has been quite a journey, and like I will say that we do try and just really, listen to our people, hear what they're asking us to do. We don't always do what they ask us to do, obviously, but we do take a tremendous amount of input from the team, and we meet regularly as a management team, but also with the next level down in the organization. And we have, our emerging leaders. So we're always communicating all the way down to the front line and trying to pull that together and keep consistency in how we've done things, because we don't want to lose our culture, right? And that, I think this next couple years ahead of us with even more growth, there's more risk to that. So again, as I said earlier when I was talking just about how we formed the company, that transparency and letting people know, like if you were in one of our town hall meetings and you hear what we actually tell our people, a lot of people are like, why are you sharing that information? Well, we're sharing it because it matters to our success, and we can't collectively be successful unless everybody knows what the heck's going on. So we tell them, and much more so than you would see perhaps in a different environment.
So the collaborative communication, town hall, has been now a repeating theme, as well as the transparency. So that's kind of my takeaway. The transparency really seems to be a driving force in what our team members require of us as leaders.
Yeah, I just add one thing. So we have moved offices 4 times since we started the business. So we now have a single-story, 40,000 square foot facility over on Phillip Street. And so when we designed it, we wanted to have a room, like a town hall, that was big enough that we could put everybody in there comfortably to meet. So that was a critical piece that we thought about as we were putting this together. We also put Carol, my business partner, in a glass box in the middle of the building. So, there's no closed door, stuff going on there. Everybody can see what's happening. And, sometimes I say to her, I don't know if everybody wants to see what's happening, but if somebody was to get upset or something in the room, you wouldn't want people looking at that. But we haven't had that situation. It's been great. So the door's open. You can go in, you can talk to her whenever you want. And she's in the office a heck of a lot more often than I am. But that, I think, has been a key piece. Now, something that we didn't anticipate when we built the building that way, or when we designed the building, was we have our dev team and customer support and professional services on one side, and then we've got sales, marketing, finance, and HR on the other. There's a big gap between the two sides of the building. So you tend to get a little bit of isolation there. So we are well aware of that. And, one of the things I personally do when I'm in the office is I walk to the other side, I walk around, talk to the people, make sure that, I'm having those conversations so that, they don't kind of think it's one side versus the other. And I think if we were to do it again, we might set it up differently.
So it sounds also too, right? You're actively building your cultural brand within your team. How do you have a specific strategy? Knowing the strength of your learning platform that you're responsible for, assuming that there's incredible growth ahead of you, is your current leadership strategy scalable to 500, 1,000, or do you think you'll have to make adjustments on the fly?
I think we're scalable to 500. I can't even think about 1,000. That's too far out in the future, right? We're one of the things that we talk to our team about. So we do a kickoff meeting every year where we bring the entire company into a facility for an entire day. We bring in guest speakers and that type of thing. And one of the things we were talking to the team about in that session this year is look, guys, the market is changing so quickly. When we started this company, when we were talking to people about brain science, gamification, micro learning, they were like, what? Now everybody is the competitors are just jumping out of the woodwork, right? There are so many companies out there. So we have to be able to change on a dime. And for the employees, sometimes they think okay, you said we were going here and now we're going there. Well, that's because we need to do it. We need to change and we need to be that agile.
Yeah, very good. So just on that note, before I turn it over to the audience, starting your company up from scratch, were there any really good or profound advice or lessons that were given to you early in your career that kind of fostered this approach? Anything specific, a mentor or somebody that you work closely with would have given to you that helped you with this kind of developing your battle plan?
So I think that, for me personally, I mean, I've always been a builder, and I'm also an adventurer. I'm not an extreme adventurer, but I am an adventurer. So always wanted to kind of find a way to do something. And Carol and I had become, I'm not going to say friends because we're not besties, but we're friends through business, right? And we said, hey, we have very complementary skill sets. So could we ever, if there was ever an opportunity to do something, we should look at it seriously. And so it was more that it kind of fell into our lap. Like Carol was playing golf with this couple, and they were in their late 60s, and they had the same lawyer as Carol had for her previous company. And he had set this golf tournament up this foursome up at the golf tournament because what he wanted to do was see if he could introduce John and Rebecca to Carol. And they said, well, we want you to come and be CEO of this. We want to have this tech company. And she's like, well, I'm already CEO of a tech company. And they didn't have any money, and they had this like one customer, and they thought, okay, we'll take this stuff that we built for this one customer, and we're gonna go and sell it. Well, you can't purpose build a solution for one customer and scale it, right? There are two different ways of building tech. So anyways, long story short, we ended up, she talked to them, and what they really needed was help on the sales side. So she connected me with them. So we started chatting, and I looked at the business, and I said to Carol, like, there's something here, but it needs, like, the tech is crap. It needs to be ditched. We need to rebuild this thing in the cloud. And, we'd have to go out, raise capital, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we said, let's do it. So we did. And my kids were scared to death. But, they go, Mom, what were you thinking? And then they said to me, well, we didn't actually really think it was going to be that successful. And I said, but they were scared, right? I mean, they were teenagers, and, I was the sole breadwinner in the family, and I went for a whole year and I didn't draw a paycheck. Right? So, these are the kinds of things you do when you're trying to figure out how to make things work. But it was that kind of fire from within for me that took me forward. It wasn't really based on a mentor.
Right. So it's all proprietary. Everything's hard fought and hard won.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So we'll just turn it over to the crowd. If there's any questions, I'm sure there's a lot of big data applications that can be pulled out of this. Any questions? Very good.
Hi, I'm just very interested in the microlearning.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could share some examples of how that's currently being used in manufacturing and how effective it's been, and maybe some, what you think the future of microlearning is, because I'm starting to hear a lot more about that, and we're actually starting to explore some of that as well.
Sure. So an example in a manufacturing environment would be we work with Merck, which is a large pharmaceutical company, and they use us in all 52 of their manufacturing facilities around the globe. And their focus there is they have a culture of safety. So they actually worked with a firm in Guelph here called Eagles Flight, who landed this process for them called Safe by Choice. And the head of Merck Manufacturing Division, he was very, very strong on the safety thing. So they landed with Safe by Choice, and we were the digital solution to carry that forward and reinforce what was done in the classroom, so it would stick over time. So they've been actually using us in that capacity now for, I want to say 4 years on an ongoing basis.
And how are you pushing out that information to the employees, like at the right time when it's needed?
Yeah, so in they're a clean facility, so they have a set of computers that the employees use before they actually go on shift, and it's right on their way into the plant. Yeah, so it has to work in the flow of work. So I'll give you a retail example because it's super fun, and it's so Foot Locker is a client of ours. And because they sell footwear, and a lot of what they do is associated with basketball, They did kind of like a basketball mantra where you check into the game. So they said, basically clock in, lace up, hit the floor. So lace up is what they call Exonify. So if you go into a Foot Locker store and you ask them if they've laced up today, you'll usually get the answer yes. I mean, I've asked in many, many stores, and I ran into a guy in Pennsylvania the other day that hadn't laced up, but everywhere else I've been, they've done it. So it kind of, you fit it into the flow of work, and I think that's an important thing. If you're going to do micro learning, you've got to get this habit going, right? You got to get it every day, and it's only 3 to 5 minutes a day. So you really need executive level support to drive that, and then you need the line of like the business line support to do it, and then you can form that habit. So I think the industry is going to transform dramatically over the next few years, and the traditional LMS solutions are going to become invisible, and they're going to move to the background, and they're going to be only there for those situations where you have to have a system of record for compliance purposes, and that the delivery of learning is going to come through micro-learning or through what's called an LXP, a learning experience platform. So there's a lot of companies out there doing that where they're connecting to all these content providers, and that's gives you the ability to consume content as you wish. So we're building that within our platform, and what's different about what we're doing versus the others is that we're going to use the AI to surface what we think you want to look at based on where your knowledge gaps are, what your scores are, what your peers are doing, not just like Netflix says, watch this because you watch that, but have more intelligence to it.
I'm just interested in the, so from a leader standpoint that wants to roll something like the micro-learning out, the Exonify model, let's say, what level of customization do they have to be able to shape their learning platform to what they need out of their, the performance of their group?
Yeah, so all of our customers, whether it's Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Borg Warner, Walmart, or Foot Locker, they all run exactly the same line of code. Okay, so it's all the same, but we may provide some enhancements. So one of the stories I'm really proud of is we work with Grab Taxi in Singapore. So Grab is like the Uber of Southeast Asia. So we onboard all of their drivers, and we've embedded our tech in their app. So the driver app comes up and it says Grab Academy. That's actually Exonify working in the background there. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was your question?
No, you answered it.
Okay.
The customization of
yeah,
the platform.
So the content, is what customizes the actual experience for the user, right? So, as I say, we might do some additional things to enhance, and that's how we've been a good partner with our clients. That we built additional functionality, but everybody runs the same code base because you can't scale a tech company if you got all sorts of different code bases all over the place, because you end up with like a support and maintenance nightmare. Yeah.
So obviously you're deployed in a lot of various locations. Any good examples of regional dexterity with regards to leadership or product rollout or anything like that?
Can you give me more what you're
Well, just the
driving
example
to?
from the UPS was just, some regional differences in the way business is done or the way the model needs to be executed. That
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so at Foot Locker, so they're global, so they're deployed in I don't know how many countries it is. It's like all around Asia, all over Europe, and throughout North America. The customs in those environments are very different. So in North America, some of what they teach, I'm talking about Levi's, not Foot Locker. Sorry. In North America, the associate may run up to you and then say, "Hi, my name's Christine. What's your name? Nice to meet you." Well, if you did that in Europe, the people would think you're out of your tree, right? So they had to kind of like think global, but act local in terms of how they deployed, their customer service model. So they wanted certain fundamental things in customer service, but they wanted other things that were unique to the market. So
great example. Thank you. I'll throw it back to the audience. Oh, we got a couple.
Awesome. So as a learning company, how do you facilitate leadership development within your organization? Is it structured? Do you use your own platform, or like what is your primary mechanisms for leadership development?
Yeah, so we do both. So we have an emerging leaders program that we run, and a lot of that is we run it in the classroom, and then it's all reinforced through Exonify. So they get modules on Exonify to continue to have them thinking about those concepts, because we're not going to turn them into leaders overnight just by putting them into a classroom. It's got to be something that, we want them when they're having a difficult conversation, we want them thinking about those things that they've had that's top of mind for them. So we add that, we couple the two together. And then there's, obviously on the job practice for sure. Yeah, I do want to say that, you can be a leader without managing people. And I think everybody thinks about leaders are managers, but they're two different things. So, I think that that's important to think about as you go forward. You can be a leader in an organization. I was actually in a role at Exonify for a while where I had no direct reports. It was my favorite thing ever. So, it is something where you can really drive things forward and do things for the business without having those direct reports. So that was something I was thinking about earlier today, and I just wanted to make sure I shared that.
Hello, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
I've recently had the opportunity to have access to LinkedIn Learning.
Okay.
And I noticed it was some things are really good, like you do kind of these 3-minute modules and there'd be 6 of them on a certain topic. And some things were really, really great. And some things were very, very general. And it was like, oh, that was a waste of 15 minutes. How do you work with your customers to make sure that the content is meaningful for the person taking that training? And do you develop and also with that, do you develop content for them, or do you work closely with the customer themselves to develop that content?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we always start with the business requirement first. And so what is the business goal of why you want to do this training? And then we go backwards from there. So if this is what you want to achieve, what do people need to do in order to achieve that? So what do they need to know in order to do that? And then we would develop the content from there. And we would do it for our customers, or our customers would do it themselves. We, can train them up and get them upskilled to build out in that micro environment. Because you want to make sure that you hit the mark. And again, when you're looking at moving to an environment where you only have 3 to 5 minutes a day, you don't want to get something that's not relevant to you, that's boring, that you waste your time on. You want to get something that, hits the mark. And that's, again, having an adaptive algorithm in the back that's surfacing that based on what you need to know and where your gaps are is an important piece. And you don't get that with LinkedIn Learning, because that's more of a self-directed approach.
There's one in the front here. Just dead. Yeah, thanks. Jeff?
Thank you. You touched on transparency, but I was wondering what other targeted strategies do you have for your leaders to attract and retain top talent in a growing tech city with some of the biggest players around?
Yeah. So, this town is a tough place to get good tech talent, because there's been so many successful firms, and you've got, the Googles and the Facebooks, that are really growing their teams. And we frankly, we can't compete with them on the salary brackets. They pay, we focus on being in the middle. Our developers are in the next tier up, but a lot of them are paying at the top end of the scale. So we have to have a culture that they want to come to work to every day. And that is extremely critical. Everything from what we do from a social standpoint with the team, what we do with team activities within the departments, what we do with the town hall sessions. We run all sorts of different types of training. So if you want like a session on stress management, or you want yoga at work, or you want, boot camp, all these different types of things that we look at doing to make it a place that you really want to come to work. And, I probably shouldn't say this, but we have beer on tap in the kitchen. We have like a lot of our our developers, like they like beer. One of our guys, his son owns a craft brewery, so we bring in, their beer and keep it in the fridge and keep it on tap. And so that's like 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. You'll see a lot of people sitting around in the town hall, just, having one beverage before they leave. That's all they're allowed. And, having a good time chatting with one another. So the other thing we've done, which is, I think, pretty cool. So in this community, it's a poker community, right? Like a lot of people play poker here. And so in the tech community, they run these huge poker tournaments every quarter. And we often host that tournament in our town hall. And so from a recognition standpoint, we have poker chips. And so you get a poker chip for, so we have three core values: be bold, collaborate, get it done. Okay, so it's easy, everybody knows them, they remember them, and they act upon them. So if you've done something that's bold at a town hall, you might get awarded a poker chip. And every year anniversary in the company, you get a poker chip. And, we have different items. Like we had a poker chip built for, sales guys that close a deal that's more than $1 million, or you meet your quota, you get a chip, like stuff like that, right? So those are always being given out. And now at the kickoff this year, we gave everybody a poker chip holder. So now on our desks, you can see what chips you got. So you go see somebody and you can tell, oh, you've been here for 8 years, or, you did the $1 million deal, or what did you do to be bold, that kind of thing. And that's been really cool.
A lot of good questions, and we can talk about yoga at work, but I'm going to have to leave the taps to Frank. Frank, you have to answer that one. I'm not touching it with a 10-foot
Sorry,
pole.
I shouldn't have mentioned that.
Anyways, unless there's any real burning questions that you want to get in, I think we've taken our time, and the questions were excellent. Thanks to the audience.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again.